Welcome to Leadership Development News, Profiles and Practice of Top Performers. I'm Dr. Relly Nadler. Dr. Kathy Greenberg, my co-host, and I have now been doing this for 20 years. So we used to be called an internet radio show. Now we're a podcast. But we're always trying to bring you tools and tips from leaders, innovators, thought leaders, gurus, authors who can help you move into the top 10%. So why do we talk about the top 10%? Both Kathy and I are fans of emotional intelligence. Why? All the research about emotional intelligence, but then we try to zero in is what is it that you can do? Anything you need to do more of, anything you need to do less of to help you be in the top 10%. And so that's a tipping point. And now we know from some of the practices that you need to have emotional intelligence, you need to do these things. Well, what is it? Like, what are some of the things that will help you move into that top 10%? And so some of the things that we think about now and why is this so important now is just where we are in our world. And everything is more. So I like to say that everything is more. So what does that mean? We have more anxiety. We have more impatience. We have more divisiveness. We have more loneliness. We have more pain. And so because everything is more, we really need you, leaders, and our audience to have some tools to deal with the more. The second piece why we're doing this is we think we're more self-aware than we are. You know, in the emotional intelligence model, self-awareness is the first part. You got understanding yourself, managing yourself. You have understanding others, managing others. Well, self-awareness, that's where you start. Well, we all think we're better cooks. We're better drivers. We're better lovers. We all think we're better than we really are. And that's where some of the blind spots can come in. So that's the second challenge. We have more. We're not as self-aware as we think we are. And then we're on autopilot. I like to say if you stay on autopilot, you stay average. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to be average. And then the last part, the fourth part, is slow thinking. We know that term now from Daniel Kahneman, System 1, System 2. System 2 is slow thinking. We don't like to think slow. It's too hard. It takes a lot of energy to do that. Well, coaching, leadership, unless you're on the front line of the military, unless you're in the emergency room, you have time to actually think and slow think. And then I think with AI these days, we've now outsourced our thinking even more. Who needs to think? Just ask Claude, just ask ChatGPT. And so we're hoping that some of what we're going to talk about is provocative for you. And then there's some tools that you can look at. And even as we move into the future with AI, we're going to need more. Our friends at 6 Seconds tell us that emotional intelligence, has dropped over the years. There is a drop of 3.5% in emotional intelligence. There's a drop of well-being, which you're going to hear from our guest, 3.9%. And optimism has dropped almost 5%. And so some of the key people that can have the influence that Gallup tells us is the manager. And so today we're going to talk with Alicia Rius, and she is going to talk about identity before skill. What most leadership programs get wrong about first-time managers. And so what Gallup tells us, about 70% of someone's satisfaction, if you're a leader, comes from the manager. And does the manager know themselves? Does the manager have the skills? And so Alicia is going to walk us through some of that. And let me introduce her now. And she's here from in Brazil, is with us now. And let me give you a little bit of her background. So
Really,
Alicia,
not in Brazil, Barcelona. I wish I was in Brazil.
okay, Barcelona. Sorry.
That's all right. Yeah.
All right.
Very
So
nice.
from Barcelona in Spain. All right. So let me say a little bit
Yeah.
about her. She is a certified coach, as both Kathy and I are. She's a PCC, stands for Professional Certified Coach, former co-founder and CEO and the author of Lead with Clarity, how managers turn confusion into confident leadership. So given everything I said, Alicia, this is going to be pretty interesting about, confusion. We have more confusion. She's lived as a doer and a leader to leap firsthand. Now she's works with teams across Europe and the US. And today through Hive Leadership. So we're asking her about that. Does team coaching in the coaching world, team coaching is really important. Something when we think about AI cannot touch team coaching because there's too many people going on. Yes, individuals piece AI can be very helpful. She's the creator of the 4Ps leadership framework. We'll hear about that and writes about the invisible shift from doer to leader. And her website is coach, or her email is coach at Alicia Ruiz, and I'll spell it Alicia Reuse.com. And then also hiveteamcoaching.com. All right. So that was a lot to kind of get there. And now we can kind of get your expertise out. So we always want to start with kind of who's helped you get to where you are. Who are some of the key people who have been major influences for you?
In my childhood, my parents and the kids that bullied me in school.
Okay.
So that was pretty much hand in hand. So the kids that were bullying me in school for many years, what they influenced me with is knowing the kind of person that I didn't want to become. They were the perfect example of the kind of person I wanted to avoid.
Yeah.
And they taught me, for the things that are bad in people and how to detect that and look for the opposite. And my parents I've been very lucky with the parents that I have. My father, he is third generation entrepreneur. And for me, he is the perseverance personified. And what he has taught me was that when things get very hard, because I saw him struggling with the company, it's about being very strategic and being very creative. So when I've had some struggles in my life, there was always, his voice telling me, we don't quit, we find a way around. And that has served me very, very much. And then my mother, she also worked many years at a family company, and she endured the hardest of times that really took her health away. But it's humor that made her go through things. I mean, she went through cancer, and you could never see her down except for the first time that she got the diagnosis, but she's always used humor to overcome hard times. And that's something that for me has helped me a lot in life, to when something is very hard and you feel that you can no longer, hold it, you use humor, you snap out of it, and then you continue. These are the people that has influenced me.
Well, I think that's always really good to hear, especially from your parents. And I think for most of us, like it or not, we go back to self-awareness. Some of those patterns are ingrained from early on. And I think as we get older, we kind of tap into that more, where we think, oh, we're different than who they are. And then all of a sudden they kind of ooze into us or out of us a little bit more.
Yeah. And I mean, I didn't mention my children, but they were in my list because that's kind of the in between.
Yeah.
My parents built my foundation, but then my children are the ones that remind me of the kind of person that I need to keep becoming.
Yeah.
And they are an example, a living example of what coaching really is, which is be curious all the time, ask tons of questions, don't judge, just be yourself, find your own essence. And they keep reminding me that. So even sometimes when I fall short as a mother, I can see that I'm still doing a good job because my daughter, the older one, will come to me and say, Mom, that wasn't right. That hurt my feelings, but I understand where you're coming from. Do you need a hug? And I'm like, well, you see my little coach there. So you keep learning from them, and that's fantastic.
Okay, well, and how many kids do you have?
2.
And how old are you? You mentioned your daughter.
Yeah, Nora, she's 9, and Liam, he's 5.
Wow.
Have a
So,
good combo.
uh, Nora being able to identify emotions and stuff at 9, that's huge.
Well, she started at 3. I remember at 3 because I did NLP. She could tell you where her emotions are in the body. She could tell you the color and the shape that their emotion had and how the emotion transformed. I mean, at 3, it was very basic. She
Yeah.
would locate it. But then at 5, she would really elaborate on how the feelings are moving and how they are transforming and what are the cluster of feelings that she had. And for me,
Wow.
it was mind blowing.
Well, but you must have asked her those questions. I mean, she didn't,
Yeah.
initially you must have said, and I know I'm familiar with NLP. So where is it? If there was a color, where is it in your
Yeah.
body? And it doesn't take long. I know we have a son who's 31 now, and then a daughter who's just finished her master's in psychology, Dylan and Kenzie, and she's 29. But I remember our son, and this is where I think if you're a parent, thinking about this, they learn about emotions from you. And I remember him saying, I have waist pain. And my wife and I are like, huh? We both looked at it, what does that mean? And then having talking about it to give meaning. Well, waist pain translated into anxiety. And so
Hmm.
when he have waist pain, and we know about emotions, what moves in the body is emotions. But if you can label it, and psychologists call it affect labeling, now you can name it as a feeling. And so now when he say waist pain, now he could say, I'm feeling anxious. And it sounds like your daughter had a good head start with
Yeah,
you.
as you said, self-awareness is the key.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about, you have been as a startup, a founder, COO before becoming a coach. Maybe what kind of companies is that? And then from the inside, how does that inform you as being a coach? And I mentioned you're a PCC, which is not easy to get. I think it's 750 hours of documented hours plus, or was, probably over 100, 150 hours in coaching. I'm on the faculty of a coaching school, so familiar with that professional certified coach. So say a little bit about what you were a startup and a founder of what?
Uh, a tech startup that was building a platform to connect musicians, artists with their super fans, to leave it at there. And that's what it is today. It's still my husband and co-founder. He keeps pushing for the startup, but after many years, I decided to step away because my goal was coaching, and also because it was about how can I still bring value to the company, the startup. And my value, I did everything that I could in terms of operations, and now it's in a phase that it can continue without me. And
Oh,
also
okay.
it's good because that was the path or the moment or the experience that led me to becoming a coach from all the
Okay.
things that I've learned.
And is that company still going on? Is your husband still involved?
Yes, it
Yeah.
is keep going on. Yeah. But it was a good decision because I said, your passion is music. My passion is coaching and self-development and developing others. And from the things that I kept seeing, not only my own startup, but in the startup environment. And
Yeah.
I saw that, we can talk about this now,
Yeah.
but for me was I'm seeing something and I want to work on it because I think that is super important that people pays attention to what I'm seeing, and I'm going to take that path now.
Okay. And so that's kind of led you through your coaching. And so so what were some of the things that you're seeing? Because it sounds like, from the inside, not every coach, has been a co-founder. I think that adds to your knowledge base, of actually doing that. So yeah, what were some of the things that you're seeing that led you?
So when I spent 10 years in California and in the startup. And one of the observations that I made was that growth breaks things. So
Hmm.
when you're building a startup, you are very much in survival mode. You are bootstrapping. It is just you and maybe some another person. the capital is limited, time is limited, and basically you are doing a lot of things all the time. You are wearing many, many hats.
Right.
And your focus is about output, results, data, proof of concept in order to raise capital. So the moment that you raise the capital, what you need to do is to hire people to keep doing the things that you were doing. And the founder is the greatest person, is the person that knows the company, is the person that has a vision. Everything runs in their head. And you need to have people who can do that for you. The problem is that as a founder, the company is your baby. So what you do is you keep doing because nobody else can do it as good as you do. So then you
Right.
have two layers of doers and no layer of leadership.
Right.
And what happens is because you go so fast, the startup world, it's very fast paced. You rarely have time to pause and think about the structure. Also, you don't have capital to start developing managers.
Right.
And then the first thing that breaks through growth is leadership. And that is the thing that I kept seeing over and over and over again, that there is no leadership layer, everybody's doing, and that's what inspired me to do the work that I'm doing now.
Beautiful. I noticed that Dr. Kathy Greenberg has joined us into the conversation. And, one of the things that you have here just around new managers is, 60% of new managers underperform or fail in the first 18 to 24 months. That is huge. So what's the why? What's the disconnect with that?
The disconnect, through my research and what I've seen on my own experience, is it about we don't understand the transition from doing to leading.
Yeah.
So companies, I think they spend like 60 billion dollars into leadership development, and still they keep
Yeah.
failing in the first months. And I think that it's because when you are teaching something, leadership development, you are teaching doing. You're not teaching being.
Hmm.
And when we talk about management and leadership, we need to talk about mindset and ways of doing and the ways of being.
Hmm.
Now, when we teach these skills and frameworks to managers, we are assuming that those managers have come to peace with the fact that they need to change the way they bring value. And that is very hard because as a doer, you spend your entire career into building something and becoming the best of it at it. And then when you promote that person, you're asking that person to get results through others, which means that you need to stop doing what you were good at.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kathy.
Oh, well, I'm just fascinated and listening because this is something really that you and I are, I'll say, struggling with on a daily basis in our coaching with good leaders who have really been well educated in achievement and
Yeah.
getting things done. And it's almost impossible for them to recognize that they are no longer tasked with the doing of things. They are tasked with the human-centric encouragement and empowerment of the people that they have been provided with to achieve a
Yeah.
goal and not do a task. So I'm listening beautifully to everything that you're saying, Alicia. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll jump more into, I guess, maybe some of the P's of how you get these folks to go from doing to leading. Don't go away. You're listening to Leadership Development News.
Welcome back to Leadership Development News, Profiles of Top Performers. We're talking about with Alicia Rius, and you can get in touch with her at Hive, Hive, teamcoaching.com, and we'll get into how she does that. But she has a new book that just came out a month ago. During the break, we heard it's her first book, so I'm sure she's super excited with that. Lead with Clarity, and we'll get into that. So we left off talking a little bit about the human doing versus human being and people being the doer. And then it looks like in management, you talk about this is more than an identity change. It's not necessarily kind of a skill upgrade, but walk us through that distinction and why it matters as an identity change versus the doer.
Yes. So management and leadership are different. Management is about managing people, but leadership, as I said, is about being. It's a mindset, and it's a way that you navigate the world. So when somebody is promoted into a management role from being a doer or the high performer, the technical expert, that person has spent many years delivering results, and it was about the personal output. Now, the moment that you ask that person to become a manager, you are asking them to get results through others,
Right.
which for that, you need to stop doing the very thing that gave you the promotion. So you have to let go of being the doer, the fixer, the expert. Now, this is part of your identity, because identity comes from repetition of the things that we do and how we see ourselves and how people perceive us. And in that moment, it is very hard for that person to let go. And that's when you see the internal block. And there was one case, I was coaching one manager, direct report of a CEO, and he told me, I'm scared of hiring people better than me,
Hmm.
because if they do a better job than I do, how replaceable I am.
Yeah.
And that fear is legitimate, because that person, it was clear that didn't understand that the way that he brings value now, it's different. That he's trading one type of value for something that is visible, tangible, to something that is invisible, ambiguous, and more complex. But nobody tells them that. Nobody tells managers, this is how you need to work now, and this is your responsibility. And what happens is, without verbalizing that value shift, then that person, it gets lost and very confused. And this is very important in practice, because when managers don't make that shift, they hire smaller, they underdevelop people, and they become the bottlenecks for themselves, their teams, and the company. So we need to work on the identity, because that's the difference between scaling or stalling.
Hmm.
You know, it's interesting as you're speaking here, I'm thinking about the reverse of that. So in my world, where I work with a lot of tactical operators, police and law enforcement, we talk about an identity as being plastic. So we talk about the elasticity of identity and the importance of recognizing that each of us is not necessarily dependent on resilience as much as we're dependent on our ability to be elastic in how we view ourselves. But the thing that you just said that struck me was a manager is responsible for their personal output, and that personal output gives them results by which they have been given validity. They have been given a place in that team, a place in that organization, and a brand of themselves. That is their identity. And then you said that they become a leader for whatever reason, probably based on that validity, that they have done something well, therefore they may be able to teach others to do that. And I think therein lies that fallacy. I understand the case study about getting others to achieve results, and that this individual was fearful that, in fact, perhaps others might do it better than they did. But there's also the opposite. You could be in a position where now you are not a good leader. You are a good doer. You're an individual contributor, and you don't have the skills to get the best out of every person that you work with. You don't, and aren't good at using human-centric engagement processes. So there's also the possibility that this person might not achieve to the level that you believe is essential for them and for you and the team to continue to be successful. So it could be either of those things. They could be fearful that they're not good enough, or they could be fearful that those around them are not good enough. So just speak to that for a second.
I agree. I think it's very complex. Even when I was, in my training talking about what comes first, if it's identity or behavior shapes identity, I think everything is very systemic and one leads the other. But the same way I've seen both. The case that I'm seeing the most is the fear of being replaceable because they don't understand how they bring value. But also it's true that I've seen it, and even in myself as a founder, that when I know what I need to do, I didn't trust others that they could do it as well as I would, because I've been doing this all my life. I'm the expert. That's why I built a company, not one, not 3 companies. So it is very hard, and these can be co-living together. Now, it is very important that when we coach the founders or the first-time managers, it's about getting clarity about their root cause. They can be both at the same time, but normally, I think if you can build your new identity and work on how you bring value from that new place and understand and appreciate that unique position that you are, then it is easier to let go because you're holding on to something. I think the problem is letting go when you don't have anything yet to hold on to.
Yeah.
And then you will, with tools, you can create systems and processes to develop others to do the job. It might not be as good as you would do it, but it will be good enough, or different, but it will work. So I agree. It's both, and they coexist.
So with your book, Lead with Clarity, maybe we'll say a little bit about that. And it sounds like one of the things that you say is when someone makes that switch, it's not a motivational problem, but it's a clarity problem in disguise. And one of the things that Kathy and I like to say, we heard from one of our guests, who is a co-author with Deepak Chopra, Rudy Tanzi, is stress is unmet expectations. And when anybody can say something in 4 words, stress is unmet expectations. And I imagine that kind of is an impetus for you around the clarity in disguise. So maybe say a little bit about that when you see those are the problems, clarity problems.
When I work with companies and I do diagnosis, it's very interesting that normally companies are very bad at self-diagnosing, and they believe they have a performance problem, motivation problem, and then through my own framework, you realize that it's where somewhere in the process clarity broke down. Now, I was at a media company, and they hired me to help build a strong leadership layer. And when I was doing all the interviews, the CEO was living one reality, the managers were living another reality, and then the operational layer was living another reality. And then that's when I realized, you see, this is not, for example, there was a performance problem. We are not getting results. And then when you start going deeper and deeper, you realize that it wasn't a performance problem. It was about not having clear expectations, super well-defined, explicit, specific, right? So that's why I believe clarity, it's the foundation of high-performing teams and companies. And when you believe that you have an issue, if you start stripping all the noise, clarity broke somewhere. And that's why you need to go there and stop removing all the assumptions and make things visible and clear for everybody.
You know what? I just want to give an alternative perspective on that. And I just had a coach that I work with up in Anchorage, Alaska. And he went through our first responder coaching program where he got certified in the Magnus One Coach certification for first responders. And maybe my world is unique, but you can be very clear with multiple layers in an organization, but there are also distinctions within those different dynamics. I'll give you this example. So there was a team leader of a SWAT team, and the team leader of the SWAT team was asked to remove a child from a home because the parents did not believe in traditional medicine. And the neighbors came and said to the police, this child is going to die if the child is not removed. And there is no law anywhere in the United States, let alone Anchorage, Alaska, that says when a child is not taken to the hospital, that they should be removed physically by the police. So the team leader, who was, in this case, given this edict, was told that both the chief of police and the district attorney both decided that they were going to use the law on their terms and the SWAT team on their terms to remove this child from the home. Now, there is perfect clarity of what the law said and what the district attorney said and what the chief of police said. But there was not a consideration on the part of the team members of the SWAT team. And as a result, while there was specific clarity, there was beliefs and principles and values that the SWAT team members disagreed with. And even though the law said, we will do this, and the team leader said, we will do this, the team members were not on board. So give me your estimation of where the clarity broke down in this particular example. Where was the breakdown? Because we can't stick with the purity of it's a performance issue or there's multiple realities. We have to really understand that individuals are, as you say, human beings, Alicia, which I beautifully love the way you articulated. And leading with clarity often doesn't have to do with the rules or the policy. It has to do with the human condition of beliefs and values.
Well, in that particular case that I find it fascinating, I think two things are converging, and I think they're very different, which is clarity and belief systems. And I think this is like mixing to like water and oil. I don't think in that particular case, clarity broke down. What I think is two things like clash, which one thing is what says on paper, and the other one is the reality and different perspectives and ways of doing and beliefs. Now, clarity in my case, and probably for the companies that I work for, it works very well because it is normally about either purpose or process or how you lead yourself. There are things that clarity is very necessary, and you can pinpoint where clarity broke down. But it is true that when we are trying to make people act, when we're trying to influence people to do something, but if that goes against their beliefs, no clarity whatsoever will make them change unless that it's about changing the way they think and they believe. So in that particular case, I don't think that clarity broke down. It's just that there was a bigger force that was getting in the way of the results.
Well, I agree with you 1,000% that it is our beliefs and our values that have to also be in alignment with the clarity. And one of the things that Relly and I, and all of us as professional coaches understand is when there is a performance issue, if it is not a clarity issue, then there is an underlying issue related to the values and the principles and the beliefs around that performance. So I just want to make sure that we don't lull ourselves into believing that it's always that black and white, right? Performance is not always going to be something we can self-diagnose, because if it's our own beliefs and values that are getting in the way of the performance, we're not going to see that. And sometimes we need an external person to facilitate that conversation. So your point about self-diagnosing is really important. Sometimes we're not smart enough to diagnose ourselves, and having a thinking partner that takes our thoughts outside of those beliefs and values where other people can hear them is it's the sauce that makes the clarity work.
Yes, 100%. And I think back to the point about the beliefs, then you need to be clear about what are your own beliefs? What are the things that are keeping you from moving forward? When you have that clarity as well, then you can pinpoint what's keeping you, stuck or in a place that you are. So that's why I'm always come back to clarity, because when you're clear about how you feel, what's stopping you, then you can do something about it, either beliefs or ways of thinking.
And this goes back to what we said earlier, Alicia. I think all the clarity is going to happen in conversations, and we don't take the time to delve deep. We don't take the time to have those conversations because we're the doer. We got a clock ticking. And so all those kind of get missed. And therefore, I'm sure as we get more into your book and the 4 Ps, and it sounds like you have a case study that helped you understand that something was missing. So we'll get back to that in just a moment. We're going to take our next break. So this is Leadership Development News, and we're talking with the author of Lead with Clarity. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Leadership Development News. We're having an engaging conversation on a beautiful new book by a beautiful human being. It's called Lead with Clarity. We were talking a little bit about the individual, and it's such an interesting conversation to dive into individual mindsets and beliefs and clarity and performance. And I know you have 4 P's that you talk about in the book, Alicia. Tell us a little bit about the P's, and then maybe we can apply them to teamwork. Because, a leader isn't a leader unless they have a team, unless they're talking to their inner monologue of multiple people. And in that case, I don't know if I really want to be working for that leader.
Hey, so just one quick anecdote. Kat, I heard this from John Maxwell on one of his things. If you're a leader and you're out and you turn around and there's no one behind you, you're just taking a walk.
I love that.
All right, Alicia, go ahead.
Well, wait, hold on. One more tiny thing, because Alicia, I think this will make you laugh. So our friend Zaina, our coach, Zaina Gotu, who we both work with, she has a coaster at her house, and it says, "Yes, I'm talking to myself. Keep moving. I'm having a team meeting."
That will be me. I can relate to that.
Yeah. So the 4 P's in teams.
Okay. So the 4 P's leadership framework. This comes because when I work with leaders, there are 4 areas that every leader has to look at, and I call them the 4 P's. So the first P is for personal, second P is for people, purpose, and process. And you can think of them like the 4 legs of a chair. So when something is not working, when one leg is wobbly, it affects the whole chair. But you don't buy a new chair or rebuild it from scratch. What you do is look for that leg that it's wonky and you steady that. For example, personal. So how you lead yourself, when that's off, you second guess yourself. When in terms of people, this is how you lead others. And when that is off, you might have teams depending on you all the time. For purpose, this is about where you're taking them. And when that's off is when you see a lot teams being very busy but adrift. And for process, this is how the work gets done. And when that's off, you can see the work falling through the cracks. So almost every leadership problem that I see lives in one of those 4. And the framework helps you diagnose and identify where clarity is missing in one or more of those areas. And the goal is that you find that leg that it's more unstable and you work on that one. And because the chair is one thing, when you steady one leg, the others are easy to work on. And that's what I like about the framework, because as you know, as a coaches, it has this systemic perspective. And when you work on something, then it creates a ripple effect. And for me, and that's something that people appreciate, that because leadership is so complex, the fact that you just don't have to do everything at once. You don't have to fix all the things. You need to start in one leg, work on that, and you will see how others get a little better.
I just saw this thing, and Relly, I don't know how you think about this, but tell me if I'm on target here, Alicia. I see a stool, right? When 3 of those things are working, you can get by. It's like a stool instead of a chair, right? So if the people piece and the purpose piece and the process piece are working, the chair still works. It's kind of like a stool, but it's still not as stable as it would be if that extra P, the personal, the self piece, were working well. The same thing if the process piece is working and the personal piece is working, but the people piece is also working. That's still a stable stool, but then the purpose piece might not be working as well. And then looking for what's not holding up everybody's chair is where you might want to begin as an analysis of what might make that stool a better stable chair for everybody to sit in. How does that sound?
I love that, because one thing about the stool analogy is that many companies or teams, they can make things work, but at a cost.
Yes.
And I'll bring that to my personal field, right? I have ADHD, so I've been coping all my life because I found a lot of strategies. I've been diagnosed very recently, and now it makes sense, but at a cost. And when you know what's not working, what's at fault, then you can be more strategic about how you want to address that. And then you might be more effective into getting the same results with less effort. So the stool, exactly, it can work, but as we've seen, at what cost? Because you can have a team delivering results, being, on top of their game, but maybe at the cost of their mental health. Right? So
Gorgeous.
yeah, right. So we need to be careful about, sometimes, even if it works, okay, what are we forcing to make it work?
Yeah. And I think Relly would agree. Relly, let me say this one thing, and then the rest of the show is yours. When we see people that claim their stuff, whether it's ADHD or whatever, neurodivergency maps beautifully with AI application and use. And I think we're going to see more beautiful, aspiring people reach their full potential in a world where people recognize the beauty of whatever it is they are in their neurodivergency. So I'm glad that you claim that and you recognize it. But I think Relly can also speak to the items that we need to be aware of with regard to burnout and overwhelm.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. I certainly think that's very common. Both of my kids, have ADHD, and we've kind of been detected it early, and it's just that they learn differently. And so I really appreciate that. And I think it opens up to the whole diversity issue. When we think about the 4 Ps, I just finished doing a supervision group with folks who are in our certification program to become coaches. And so much of the things that they talked about for themselves as coaches were the self-sacrifice on the personal side. And so maybe to tie this into the team piece, how do you work with teams? And then does that self-sacrifice, I would imagine it on the personal side, or maybe it's also the people side, lead to burnout? How do you address that? Because I think for a team, they're all about the productivity, and they almost don't want to hear, I'm a weak link if I'm saying anything about burnout, or I'm a weak link if I'm not producing. I'm a weak link if I'm taking time for myself.
I mean, we have to look at teams as the core of any company. I mean, even if it's just like 2 co-founders building something, that's a team of 2. And the way I see teams is, again, I cannot separate them from the whole and from the parts. And I think teams are what keeps companies alive. Teams are made of people, and each one is individual. And when I work with teams, I cannot work the individual, because that is when I look at it as a Swiss clock. When a Swiss clock works perfectly, it's because all pieces at their own level are perfect, are clean, they're not rusty, they bring value, and they know their role. And together, they build something that delivers another type of value. So that's the way I like to work with teams, which is understanding how the whole works together and their potential, but also at the individual level. And I don't think that, some people might think I'm the weakling or I'm not as good as the other, but then it's about finding what makes them unique, how they bring value in the team, because each one of them might have something specific, but they might not be aware, or maybe that gift was, hidden by other things.
Mhm.
It can be the burnout, it can be personal stuff outside work. So you need to look at it as a whole and at the same time as the parts.
So how do you bring that into a team meeting? I mean, or do you bring that into a team meeting? I know Kathy and I talk about strengths where we bring in a lot of assessments. But are you trying to facilitate that they talk about their strengths or they talk about areas that they need to develop to better focus on the team?
It all comes back to what does the team need and what is the company asking the team to do. You need to have clarity on that, because otherwise you can be opening all the Pandora boxes and get nothing done. So once there is clarity about what the company needs from that specific team, then it's about finding the right tools, especially with diagnosis. And I love self diagnosis tools, but at individual level and at the same time as a group. And I was doing one recently where they did it at their, at their own time, and then they did it all together. And it was incredible how their perspectives and understanding of the question really changed. And then is when you realize that even the team, they might not even be aligned towards one simple thing, which is what's your purpose? What's your mission as a team?
Yeah.
And then, no wonder why the team is not performing well if everybody thinks that their purpose is something different. You are not on the same boat. Everybody's rowing in different boats, different directions. So that's what I like to do. Start with some diagnosis to understand where is everybody, and then work from that and align it to what the company needs from them.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing about the beautiful visual you created for us, Alicia, the Swiss clock. And I think you mentioned, if I heard you correctly, that even somebody on the team might have a little rust. And we talk about the important aspect of everybody's gifts that they bring. And even if somebody brings a little bit of rust, recognize that that rust is their resilience. It's their identity and their knowledge. And it's their application of that beautiful chemical that makes other people's value enhanced. Because by having the experience, the knowledge they have, they're bringing their plasticity and recognizing something that has value from their past in the creation and development of the value of the beauty of that team's delivery in the future.
That is exactly right.
So we're coming to the end, Alicia. Let me do our little lightning round. And so just a little sentence completion. And so just whatever pops in your head. Leadership is
a way of being.
Okay. And at work, it's all about
knowing how you bring value.
Okay, great. And this is more for you. During the day, what do you do to recharge? Because that would be kind of the anti-burnout. What do you do during the work day to recharge?
Find little things that brings you joy.
Okay. And what's one that you're going to do today or you've already done?
I've already done it, which was gardening.
Oh, okay. Great.
Like checking my flowers, cleaning the garden. I love that, the little things.
So for our listeners, you do want to think about what Alicia's saying and, what are you doing today? It doesn't take a lot. I heard this term, Kathy, yesterday. I'm kind of thinking who I even heard this from, but it's around this mindfulness practices and they call it glimpse. What are glimpses? Oh, and it's just a different way of saying, like sometimes we talk about micro initiatives. What are the small things? What's a glimpse you can do to help you recharge?
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Alicia. And Relly, you're always the glimpse in my day. I want to make sure all of our listeners get the beautiful value of leadership development news. We have over 800 podcasts. Please go grab one that has meaning for you. Get a glimpse of the world that we've created over the last 20 years that we're celebrating with you. Thank you for tuning in to Tune Up. And don't forget, we're here every week to help you get a glimpse of who you really can be.